Picks.
inaugural segment of Pat's picks. So, contrary to what the name might suggest, I'm not going to give anybody gambling picks here because if I did, I'm sure you turn this podcast off immediately. They would not be good. Instead, I'm going to pick a random topic, particularly now that the draft's over, maybe something to fill a little time, something that I pick that we want to talk about with all the NBA stuff going on, thing that's been top of mind for me is NBA or basketball video games and some of my favorite video games of all time. So I want to go through my list here. So of course this is a subjective list. These are all games that I have played. I hope that the two of you have experienced at least some of this list. It's pretty standard stuff, but there might be a couple of random things as well. First, two quick honorable mentions. First, NBA Ballers, which was a PS2 era game. Stephon Marbury was the cover athlete for that. So a game based on it was kind of a street ball esque game where you would literally beat NBA players and then you'd earn points or money to get jewelry, tattoos, clothes, house. I believe you could get a Cadillac Escalade at some point, just like peak early 2000s NBA basketball culture. It was fantastic for the era. Did either of you play that one?
I did.
I vaguely remember it. Yeah.
I mean, you can't miss a Stephon Marbury. And then second honorable mention,
Oh boy, he's got props. Oh, let's go.
backyard
Whoa,
basketball.
honorable mention.
Honorable mention, and I think the reason why this is an honorable mention is because I think it did fall a little short compared to its brother and sister games in backyard baseball and backyard football. Nonetheless, a fantastic rendition. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see our boy Kevin Garnett gracing the cover of Backyard Basketball. Just a really, really awesome game. Number five on my
It
list.
was.
Also, why? Hold on. Why do you have that? That looks like
I
it's pristine. Did you just buy that off of
I
eBay?
just bought it probably within the last year. It was like $8, brand new, never opened. Like at what point is a deal too good to pass up? Because I think that qualifies most certainly.
Oh yeah.
I, I still got ours. Still.
Great series
Right
of
with me.
games, but that's one of my honorable mentions. And then number five, this is more of a series. So I don't know if you guys ever did this. I We were not predominantly an Xbox family growing up, but my brother did briefly have a Xbox, original Xbox. This is the NBA Inside Drive 2002 with Vince Carter on the cover. So this was a Xbox only series. And one of my favorite memories was we were an NBA Live or an NBA 2K family always. So this was one of the first games we bought when my brother got an Xbox, and we could not figure out the controls whatsoever. Like it was awful. Our final score in the full regular game, I believe it was like 8-3 was the final score because we could not figure out the controls whatsoever. But that's a nostalgia pick. Just entire NBA Inside Drive series. I think it went for 4 years and it was exclusive to Xbox. I, I think this was also a Blockbuster rental. We rented this from Blockbuster a few times as well.
Never heard of it.
Really
I
fun,
didn't
and
have an Xbox that
it
early.
was the cover art was so much cooler than it was like more cartoony than the NBA Live and 2K. So that was partially you always buy a book based on its cover, and I think that was a prime example for my brother and I growing up. Okay, next is NBA Live 2002, which was my initial like dive into the simulation style basketball game. So I still do have a copy of this. And my fun fact here. First off, do you remember who was on the cover of that one?
Well, I know KG was 01, and then it's Jason Kidd, isn't it? Or
Kid
is
was
that 03?
03. Kid was 03. So this is kind of a
Is
little
it Steve
obscure.
Francis?
Stevie
Stevie
franchise,
franchise.
NBA
I
Live
have my.
Let's
2002.
go.
I have his jersey.
And then my fun fact for this one in the USA we got Stevie franchise gracing the cover. In Japan, Wizards Michael Jordan
Oh,
was the cover athlete for NBA Live 2002. So yes, I have a Japanese copy of NBA Live 2002 because I am absurd like that. So that is
Wait,
my next slot there.
why didn't we get the MJ version?
Great question, and I have no idea. I have no idea, but that's my fun fact for Pat's picks. So number three, I don't know if either of you have come across this in a bar or barcade, arcade, but is any of the NBA Jam arcade machines, which is a fantastic, like one of the best arcade machines of all time. It's the two on two style, and it's really good. And I think the if I can recall correctly, I believe the Timberwolves have Christian Leitner is one of the players, and I can't remember who the second player is off the top of my head right now, but really fun game. And if you've had 3 or 4 beers, it is even more fun. So that's number three on my list. If you're ever at like
it
a
looks like
can't
you can buy it from Target for $600 right now.
nice.
Just a
I
not a full size version. I don't think. I think it's more of
mini
the
version.
mini. It's still pretty life size, but not the.
Sometimes you can get those at Costco for 300.
Looks like a vintage one would be 4,200 or 4,500.
Or go to
Good
Can
to
Can
know.
Wonderland and spend $10 or $15 or whatever it is, get some good beers at Black Stack Brewing and play a little bit of
Wow.
NBA Jam. I
Couple
have done
plugs
this
there.
before. This is
I was
not a
there last
sponsored
weekend. I did
segment.
not see it.
Oh, I've never been there. I guess I need to go.
Walked right by it.
It's a pretty fun place. Okay,
All right. What's
I
next?
couldn't find this one. I'm sure we've all played this one. So these last two are not up for debate. I'd say the first three plus honorable mentions, you could all debate those. These next two, undebatable, objectively the best two video games of all time. First, NBA Street Volume One. I could not tell you how many hours that I put into that game. It's arguably one of not only my favorite basketball games of all time, but one of my favorite video games of all time. And the top seed, number one crown, NBA Street Volume 2, unbelievable video game. It is everything that the first volume had, plus more. It got better. You had the ability to unlock 8 foot tall lava monsters at one point and aliens that you could play. It is everything that an
Oh, I
arcade
do not remember
style
that.
fun shout out our good friend Mike. Him and I went to his sister's dorm room and stayed up the entire night, as I think we were probably middle schoolers at that point, unlocking all these playable characters. And you can field the squad. There might be a Yeti. I know there's an alien, and there's a molten lava man that you can play with in this game. Undoubtedly, in my opinion, and it should be everybody's opinion, NBA Street Volume 2 is the greatest basketball video game of all time.
Wow, you really put a lot of thought into that list there, Pat. I'm impressed.
15 minutes before the pod, I was searching my video game shelves, seeing what I had. But this came pretty easy to me. I've probably put way too many hours of my life into basketball video games. Something I'm very, very passionate for. More to
I will
come
say
on
the
future
only
Pats picks.
I will push back a little bit there,
Well,
just from nostalgia on my end. I was an NBA Live guy growing up before 2K and the consoles kind of really took over there in college. I will say NBA Live, I believe 2005 with
Yep,
Carmelo.
that's where I was going to go too, Kev.
With Carmelo Anthony was the first year they installed the All-Star game mode, and that entailed the dunk contest.
Yep.
yep.
And I just remember only doing that, and I would have friends over, and we would each pick a player that would be one of the top dunkers in the league, and then you would just try to mash the buttons in midair or go in slow motion, and you try to do all these cool between the legs, and it was just epic. I just remember that. It was like they would
I
hold
think
up the
that
signs and I don't know.
that would have been my number one. I don't know that I have 5, but I think that would have been my number one. I've got a couple other games I'm going to throw out here in a minute, but some of the dunks you could do in that game were physically impossible. The double between the legs, I don't know. Have we really ever seen anybody do that?
I don't think
Maybe,
it's ever
but not.
happened. I don't,
Or the 720, like a legitimate 720.
Yep.
And I think there's one where you bounce it off the shot clock and do 3 backflips and then catch it and go between the legs and dunk it. That game was nuts.
Incredible.
It was.
That's a fantastic call out, Kev. That's a very good game. It's not on my top 5, but I can add it to my honorable mentions because I do remember doing some incredible dunk contests in that game as well.
Okay, and then the one other one I was thinking of when you were talking about them was NBA Live 2010, which is the one I played by far the most
Yeah.
because I think it was the last year. They discontinued it, and then they tried to bring it back with Kyrie, and what was that, 13 or something? It was
Yeah.
just a failure. And the franchise was gone. But 2010, so like years later, we would still be playing 2010 because we're like, this is all we have, and I wasn't into 2K yet, I think, until 2K12. So there was a couple years of no man's land, and we would just go back, and I would download like the rosters from the servers and upload the new draft classes and all of that. And I just remember playing it so much. Dwight Howard was on the cover,
Yep.
and yeah, I don't know what made it so cool. I think the graphics were like, it was one of the first years where the graphics were really coming into their own, and it just felt like it was a really good video game.
Kev, I remember Steven and I used to play against you. It was us two versus you, like all the time in your basement. And I can't remember who Steve and I were, but you were I think the Wizards
Kyle Korver.
with Gilbert Arenas.
Oh,
And I think you dropped 90 on us. There was a game where you're just decided that you're just going to drive down the center of the court and go in for a dunk with Gilbert Arenas every single time. You weren't even chucking up threes.
it wasn't John Wall back then? I feel like he would have been
I thought it was Gilbert Arenas.
2010.
What team would he have been on?
I'll look it up.
Well,
There's
no, John
certain-
Wall didn't come till 2012, right? With
That sounds
Boogie
right.
and
Yeah, that's
true. Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
NBA Live.
So that probably was Gilbert Arenas. Yeah, because I remember you'd always pick those gold, ugly gold jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best part about all those video games is the amount of jerseys that you could choose. Just pick the most hideous ones, obviously.
There were some bad ones in those days. There's some bad ones now, but there were
Yeah.
some bad ones then. One game that I remember playing on the N64 was NBA on NBC Showtime.
Yep.
And it's pretty similar to NBA Jams, I think, but I just remember the guys jumping over the hoop to set you up for an alley-oop. And the ball would be on fire and stuff like that. And I think that's where I learned the phrase "boom shakalaka." I think
that's NBA Jam. That's Boom
That's
Shakalaka
Jams,
is
okay.
NBA Jam. But I know I've never played the NBA on NBC, but I've seen that game, and I think you're right. I think it is more of an arcade style game.
But
as
it was
well.
on the N64, which was awesome.
Yep.
And I always loved that NBA on NBC jingle too.
Yep.
So it was just fun to hear that over and over and over again. And then the other one, I don't know if you guys remember this, but Kobe Bryant's NBA Courtside. Do you remember that?
That wasn't on Game Boy, was it?
It might have been, but it was on N64.
Oh,
I had it
don't
for the
remember this-
N64.
I don't remember that at all.
I think they only had one. I don't think they
Okay.
ever did anything else, but I think it was 90. Must have been 98 or 99 because
Sure.
Marbury was still on the team. So what year did Marbury leave? Was that 99? 2000?
Gosh, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, but that was a really fun game too. And Kobe Bryant, he was still number 8. He had the fro. That was like when Kobe was cool. That was before like raper Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
So that was a sweet game too.
I'll have to look that up.
Taking me down a rabbit hole.
I'll have to look that up because I feel like I might have had that for Game Boy Color or some sort of, like I remember a Kobe game. So if that, I might have had a rendition of that if they made it for Game Boy Color. My favorite thing about this conversation is that the newest game that we talked about was 2010, and that's 15 years ago, like almost 15 years ago, which is funny. And obviously we have grown up a little bit, right? There's less time for video games and things like that, but just very funny to think about the different eras that, I mean, we're talking about John Wall feels like yesterday, right? And he wasn't even in the league when we're talking about NBA Live 2010. And
yeah, I was so desperate for games back then to play because there was like just like transition between like, sure, before I had the Xbox, and it was just like I only had a PC growing up, so I was a computer gamer, and we'd play with the Logitech controllers on that, and so I kind of missed out on a lot of those N64, early Xbox edition PlayStation games. But then I remember like I was so desperate for like just anything, and then I would install in like high school. I think it was a mobile NBA Live app that they came out with, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" Like it was way ahead of its time. I installed it on my iPod Touch, and I brought it to school, and everybody else would be playing like Word Scramble or whatever. What was whatever people played in high school on their touchscreens, and I was playing NBA Live on my little iPod. It was
incredible.
It was awesome.
One of the other games I want to throw out there is NBA Live 2004 with Vince Carter on the cover.
Vince Carter.
Game was sweet. It had one of the better soundtracks.
Yeah.
Like it was a really good soundtrack. I think Chingy was on it. Right there.
Incredible.
Okay.
That's one of the best soundtrack video game songs ever.
Here's your homework for another future Pat's Picks. Top video game soundtracks.
Ooh, I can do it.
Or
I've got a couple outside of NBA Live already.
Nice.
Yeah, or even like a song that you remember specifically from one video game that doesn't have to necessarily be a whole soundtrack. But
the other thing that was cool about NBA Live 2003 is, so like Kev said, I also kind of I had an N64, but I played most of my like sports video games on the PC also, and that was a 2-disc, and so it took forever to download and install and everything. But one of the discs, I think, actually it might have been your brother Steven's. I think I borrowed one of the discs and it worked on my computer, and the other disc worked on his computer. But on my computer, it made my gateway computer moo like a cow every single time we played it.
whoa.
It was so loud. It would just go moo.
Okay, that just also made me think of one more thing. One of my old Xboxes I had in high school, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Nothing was working, and I didn't get the red ring of death or anything. But like it would just say can't read disc. I'm like, what the hell? What am I doing wrong here? So I just kept trying new games. I'm like, oh, is this disc dirty? And I would go and I'd clean off every single disc. I had like 20 games laid out. I ended up inserting all of these different discs without realizing that like the whole disc tray was broken on the inside. So it was like rotating on a bad axis, and it was scratching the bottom of every single disc that I had. So I ended up ruining like 12 plus games that whatever were $60, $50 at the time. So I was just rifling through. I'm like, it was the worst feeling of all time. I'm like, no, all my saved franchises.
Brutal.
Like, couldn't access that again. So I think I ended up reaching out to like Xbox and they gave me some money back. I don't know, but yeah, it was a disaster. Well, that was a fun Pat's picks, Pat.
That was a good first one, Pat. Nice job.
Stay tuned for more. We're going to keep some of it sports adjacent. Some of it might be a little more lifestyle. We'll see.
Food.
It's going to be random. Food. It's going to be random, and we'll try and bring some fun things to talk about, particularly when there's less going on in Minnesota sports.
Can you give us a heads up next time? Just because I feel like you were so much more prepared for that answer that I feel like I want to at least have something to add.
We started off with a little bit of a passion project, and to be fair, I didn't put a ton of thought in this. This was like a 15-minute before we started recording type of thing, but it just so happens that I love basketball video games that much. But yes, I think it is only fair that I will give the crew a heads up on what we're thinking. Some of it might be a little bit deeper like this one, but some of them might be a little more surface level too, depending on what kind of time we're running into. But
are you planning on a shoes episode? Because I definitely can't, because I have my Adidas and my Kizik's, and that's all I can really.
We might have to. I have a pair of AE1s we might have to spotlight coming up here soon, and with some of the colorways that I've seen in the pipeline, I might have to get a couple pairs. So we'll see. We'll give you a heads up on what we're having, but all shoes are welcome here.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't wait for that draft. I want to be filled in on that. At least, yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Gosh, we could be here all night. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will be back sometime later this week with more insight into the Timberwolves at Denver Nuggets matchup for round 2 of the NBA playoffs. Some more Vikings Nuggets as always. Hopefully the Twins keep winning. Skol, baby.
Skol.
Ow.